Hi everyone and welcome to this video. In this video I want to discuss some recent changes that were announced by Offensive Security when it comes to the OSCP exam. In particular, they are changing a bit the name, they are changing a bit the exam, and they are removing the bonus points. So, who am I? I obtained the OSCP certification last year, in the 20 August 2023, and after that I've written a blog post on it, OSCP Technical Guide, which you can read, and I've also created a YouTube channel where I teach stuff related also to the OSCP certification and general computer science and computer security topics. In particular, if you're interested in learning for OSCP, I suggest you go check out my OSCP guide. This is 12 videos free, you can just watch them, and I discuss various aspects of the knowledge required to obtain the OSCP certification, and then I made a series on web exploitation, and now I'm making series on Linux privilege escalation and Windows privilege escalation. The web is also done, that's 13 videos. The Linux I'm about to be done, that's gonna be like 12, 13 videos too, and then I'm gonna finish the Windows. So I hope you find this material useful. Please spread it with people because it's gonna help me grow and it's gonna push me to create even more content. So that's it for the introduction, and now we can read the blog post by OffSec. So this was announced 2 days ago. So let's read the announcement from Offensive Security. Starting from November 1st, 2024, the OffSec current OSCP exam will be replaced with an updated version. The updated exam will feature the following changes: enhancement to the Active Directory portion of the exam, removal of bonus points. So let's keep reading and then I will come back to these points of bonus points and Active Directory. So why is OffSec changing the exam? OffSec methodology and pedagogy continue to evolve to better reflect our more modern approach. As part of our continuous evolution, OffSec is pleased to announce an important change. So, this change will apply to all the certification and all the exams that happen after November 1st, and also I think including November 1st. So as of November 1st, 2024, we are updating the Active Directory AD portion of OSCP exam. This update will make the OSCP exam consistent with all the other certification. Now, in the past, the AD environment was gated with a compromise unrelated to the AD experience. This means that to actually get inside the Active Directory, you needed to do typically some web exploitation. That is, you had a web application, you had a web app, and this web app was running within an AD cluster, of 3 machines. So it was running in one of the machines within the Active Directory. So to get to the Active Directory, you had to go through the web app. You would find maybe credential, you would find like a foothold point, and you would use that to get inside the cluster. At that point, the typical topology of the AD cluster in the OSCP exam is like I have 3 machines where there is an AD here, and then there is like MSC1 and MSC2, like 2 different machines. You enter from one of these from the web, and then you have to pivot to the other, and then you go to the AD. Typically, this is the typical experience of like Active Directory within the OSCP context. And so the idea is that if a learner was unable to exploit this vulnerability, there would be no way for the learner to demonstrate their AD knowledge for OffSec to adequately assess the learner's AD capability. Further, learners will also need to solve all elements of the AD domain to receive any points related to the AD portion of the exam, a significant percentage of the total exam grade. So the idea was, if you did not fully compromise Active Directory, you would get 0 point, no matter if you, for example, finish 2/3 of the machine. I mean, since the AD is made up of 3 machines, and they are connected like this typically, I mean, they're in a network, you can communicate with every one of them, but like if you just did this one and this one and not the AD, you did not compromise the AD, you would get like, you did 2 out of 3, but you will get 0 points. So they changed this, and now they give you gradual points depending on how much you completed the Active Directory portion. Finally, an unintended consequence was that our bonus point system also allowed learners to potentially disregard the AD portion of the OSCP exam. So the bonus points, how many were they? There were 10 bonus points, so 10 bonus points, and then you also had 3 independent machines in the exam, which means machines that were not connected in an Active Directory network, which could be either Windows or Linux boxes. And since each of those machines gave 20 points, you have 20 times 3, that's 60 points given by the independent targets, plus 10 of bonus, you reach 70, which is the threshold for passing the exam. So like there will be scenarios where you would not need to compromise Active Directory, but you will need to finish all the 3 machines, both the user part and the root part. Now, the OSCP exam update provides learners with the ability to work through an assumed compromise, where learners start with a standard user account on the AD domain with the goal of full domain compromise. So now they change the game. At this point, you no longer have to go through a web application, but rather you are already given the credential to one of the machines in the domain, and your objective will be to compromise your presence, to do a privilege escalation on the domain, to explore, to pivot through other machines in the domain, and to obtain administrator in all the domain machines, and specifically in the domain controller. Additionally, OffSec will also allow learners to earn partial points within the AD domain, removing the requirements to fully clear the AD set. So the main big changes that go through the Active Directory portion are: there is no longer a web application to exploit initially, there's no longer a pivot point, a foothold point to get inside the domain. You are already inside the domain with a set of given credential, and then you have intermediate points for AD compromise. It's not like before that it was either all in or nothing. Now it's a bit more in the middle. If you compromise 2 machines, you have more points. If you compromise just 1 machine, you still have some points. Then essentially they say also that they change the exam. So here we're talking about this later in the video. So what about bonus? And then they talk about removing the bonus points. Now what are the bonus points? Essentially they were 10 extra points that they were given, but only if you successfully completed a certain threshold during the training, during the time you had access to the academy. And in particular, this threshold where you had to do, I believe, 80% of all exercises in each module, and then you had to finish a bunch of machines in their internal laboratory. I'm not sure the number, I'm not sure if it was 30 or something. It was just a number within their internal labs, and once you obtain that number of own machine, you would get your bonus points. Now, bonus points, they say that they were not needed to pass the exam, but the key is that if you obtain the bonus points, probably you studied most of the material they provided, and therefore you had a better training. You just had more training, more time to understand the patterns, and so you were more likely to succeed in obtaining the certification. And then here there's also some legal bureaucratic stuff that is they did not recognize bonus points to be awarded. So some people, I guess, couldn't use their OSCP certification, maybe because they obtained it with bonus points. I don't really know about that. So simply put, removing bonus points make the OSCP certification even more valuable for learners. We still recommend completing the bonus points exercise to help train and prepare. And this is also what I recommend. I mean, if you take OSCP, try to do at least 80% of all exercises and try to do at least 30 machines in their internal labs. Simply put, it helps you to train, it helps you to understand all the patterns, because at the end, the exam machine is not too different from what they give you in the training. You just gotta prepare yourself. So essentially here they repeat themselves a bit. In particular, for the Active Directory exam set, learners will be provided with a username and password simulating a breach scenario. So there's no longer a web app, they just give you credential. Learners may then accumulate points for machine 1, 2 and 3 of the Active Directory in total. So 10 points for machine 1, 10 points for machine 2, and 20 for machine 3, which I assume is the domain controller, is the big machine that you need to complete to finish the exam. So essentially you have 3 machines, 2 auxiliary and 1 important, and you have 10 points for the auxiliary one and 20 for the domain controller, which is the heart of Active Directory. And so now, in general, the exam points will be allocated as follows. You have still 60 points for the independent machines, which are 3. So 20 points per machine, where you get, so essentially 10 for getting a reverse shell within the box, and 10 and more 10 for getting a root shell or an administrator shell within a box after you obtain an initial low privilege shell. And then you have an Active Directory set with 40 points in total. So you have 60 and 40, that's 100. distribute as follows: 10 for the first, 10 for the second, and 20 for the final and third. So this means that to obtain the certification now, there are different scenarios. So either you do all the Active Directory and all the local flags. This is good. So you don't need to do any privilege escalation. Or you do all the Active Directory. In 2 machines, you do getting the foothold, so you just do the initial part. And in one of those 2 machines, you also get the root part. So this is another thing. Or you can get a little bit of AD, and then you do, for example, 3 footholds and 2 privilege escalation. So the idea is that there are way more options now, because it's true that you don't have bonus points, but since you can half compromise the AD, you can partially compromise it to get partially points. It's like, even if you just do the first machine Active Directory, you still can pass the exam. And this is an important point, because some people previously, maybe they failed the Active Directory portion, and so they couldn't really get the certification if they did not have bonus points. Now, I suppose the role of the bonus points is just compromise the first Active Directory and finish all the other machines. And so this new exam format, which is entitled OSCP Plus, will begin on November 1st. Now, what do I think about it? Now, I'm not sure why they call it OSCP Plus, because when it comes to HR, maybe it could confuse them, thinking that OSCP Plus is better than OSCP. I've also read that this OSCP Plus will have an expiry date, which is 3 years. So you obtain the OSCP Plus, and after 3 years it expires, but when it expires, it simply becomes a normal OSCP, which never expires. So this is a little bit confusing. I believe they did this expiry thingy for bureaucratic reason, for being in standard, for respecting the standard of this ISO 17024, something like that. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not really I don't really think this naming is a good choice, to be honest. Maybe they could have worded it differently, like not OSCP Plus, because it makes a direct comparison between OSCP Plus and OSCP. Especially with HR, who maybe do not go into the details to understand this kind of stuff, it can be confusing. Anyways, the change in the exam are kind of understandable after all, because the bonus points are not related to the exam, so it's good they remove it, although it's still important to train, so you should still do it. And the fact that they give partial points for Active Directory, I also agree with this kind of thinking. And the final change, of course, is now you are given a set of credentials for the Active Directory part. On this, I'm not sure if I agree or not, but after all, that portion of the exam is to test you on Active Directory. So you can be tested on web in the other machines, so maybe it makes sense. It's more like clean this way. It could make sense. I guess it makes it a more like CTF-like experience rather than a real pen test in which you have to go through all the initial layers to get to the core, which is the Active Directory. So this is it for this change. I think overall it's an okay change. Once again, I'm just not sure about this naming, OSCP Plus, because technically it's not like more hard than OSCP or it has something new than OSCP. It's just like an organizational change, and I believe it has mostly to do with bureaucratic reasons, essentially. So this is it for this OSCP exam change. Once again, I suggest you to go and learn to prepare for OSCP also with my videos on my channel. You can see the OSCP guide, the web exploitation, the Linux and Windows privilege escalation series. All these series actually have in target OSCP. And so this is it for this video. I hope it was interesting, you got something out of it. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, share this video with like-minded people, and see you to the next video. Thank you.